Well, today is Chemo Round 2, Day 10. And I apologize for not having kept up the vlog, but honestly, this week I would have been very little good at, at communicating, as I spent most of the week after Monday's new Leicester shot pretty doped up and asleep. Um, I think between having just having been in the hospital for as long as I was, not to mention the fact having been fighting an infection, everything, I think my whole system was just weak, and the chemo alone was hitting me hard, and then for whatever reason that new Leicester shot on Monday um, really got painful, and Advil was not cutting it, so I actually had to take the prescription pain meds, which any of you who know me in real life can say or can tell I do not like taking pain medication at all. None of my doctors have to worry about me becoming addicted to pain meds because I simply don't like the dopey way that they make me feel. However, make me feel a lot better than I did without them this week. So it was kind of an interesting week of not quite knowing what day of the week it was, getting the kids out the door, trying to remember what day of the week it was, making sure I had food here, which there were a couple days I didn't quite always get that straight. Thank God for delivery, and my dad running errands here and there. So it's been a rough week. One of the other thing that makes things very exciting that isn't exactly the glamorous side of breast cancer. I'm sure Susan B. Komen doesn't talk much about this one. Is what it does to your digestive system. First off, I think there's this blanket. Yes, well, chemotherapy makes you nauseous. It's not always true. It really depends on what you're taking. Everybody will react to their chemotherapy differently, and different chemotherapies are more prone to one thing versus the other. So, but as a precaution, because it is an overwhelming side effect, most people will naturally have that. Is they give you the anti-nausea meds. We talked about the Aloxi, and yeah, I still have a green splotch right here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's still this big, and you can tell it's there. So you get that, or there are a couple of other medications that you can take for anti-nausea. Um, One of the other side effects is that it plays with your taste buds, and again, it depends on who you are and what round. Last round, I had that craving for garlic pizza, and my friend who's going through chemotherapy at the same time had this craving for Italian. Um, Kind of strange things. That's more the steroids. Last round, I didn't really have too much effect when it came to my appetite for the most part, except for that bit when I'd gotten sick, which again we think was more of a 24-hour bug that just lasted longer because my immune system was jeopardized. This time round, though, um, it's not that I haven't been hungry. It's that I will want something, and then when I taste it, it doesn't quite taste right. And chemo will mess with your taste buds. I guess one of the overwhelming symptoms that people will talk about is things will have a metallic taste or an off taste. There's something um, metallic or synthetic almost about the taste as opposed to something else. So your taste buds are distorted. But the weird thing that I'm finding with this is that there are certain foods that are perfectly fine, and there's other foods where it's just terrible. So for example, anything with mustard or vinegar, anything that's got that kind of sour um, taste is fine. If it's got a strong taste like cheddar cheese, fine. So I mean, one of my saving graces this week was grilled cheese sandwich with mustard. Beef is fine, but then there's some flavors that just aren't quite right. One of the nights that I'd uh, it's par for the course. The meal trains kind of died down a bit, and so we're kind of left to fend for ourselves for a bit. And I'd ordered Chinese this week, and I got steamed chicken with broccoli, I got beef with garlic sauce, and then I got Singapore chow mein fan with just chicken, no shrimp or anything like that in there. And I, ordinarily, you know, I told them to go light on the curry in that one because they'll usually add some curry to it. That kind of flavor is actually usually very comforting to me. Um, I was more nervous about the garlic sauce. So well, this actually goes back earlier in the day. I had lunch with my rock, and we'd gone to Subway, and I wasn't terribly hungry. Like with this run of chemo, I'm not quite that hungry. I can eat, but not as much as I might ordinarily. Um, so I ordered a cup of their chicken noodle soup, pretty standard, not feeling great thing. I ordered a 6-inch turkey sub, just a 6-inch turkey sub with lettuce, tomato, cucumbers, and a little bit of light mayonnaise. I figured I'd keep it mild, and that should be fine. And when I tasted the soup, it just tasted. I didn't really taste anything. Now, it could be the Subway soup, but I can't imagine it was. But there was that weird metallic taste, and I was like, okay, that must be chemo or something. I don't know. I dismissed it. The sub, it didn't taste bad. It didn't taste good. It didn't quite have a taste. I can't. Something was off. It was just off. I ate it because it was there, but something was just weird. But the taste of cucumber came through. Again, weird stuff. But when we had the Chinese, again, I was more nervous about the things that had the stronger flavors. But I had ordered chicken noodle soup from them, and then I tried the beef, and the beef was fine. Chicken was fine. But there was something about the smell and the taste of the Singapore chow mai fun that was so nauseating to me that I had to make the kids take the food into the other room to finish eating and to just clear that away completely. I couldn't even smell it. I mean, it was like a noodle that had fallen on the table, and I couldn't even be in the same room with it. Um, and yet the next night, I made chicken scarpiello from scratch, and I made it pretty strong, and it was wonderful, and I could taste everything. But one of the other fun side effects of, and it's not even the chemo itself, but it's the drugs that you take around it, is that you have terrible constipation. So you have to take laxative to go along with it. Well, the problem is that, of course, when you take chemo and the drugs, you're taking them in kind of one lump dose, and then it goes, and then it kind of fades out of your system. So given that constipation side, they tell you to take laxatives. So and they usually tell you about how many to take, but they say if you take a little bit more or less depending on what's going on. So you think you're okay with the doses that you take. And then what happens is all of a sudden it'll hit you. Um, and you don't know when, because you may have overtaken some laxatives, you may have undertaken them. Anyway, it can be a rather unpleasant situation in either direction, um, and very uncomfortable. And again, the tough thing also is when you're taking some of the laxatives, it's also unpredictable as to when it will hit you. So of course it hits in the most inopportune times, like when you're in the car. Um, Today it happened while I was in the middle of cooking, expecting a visitor, and of course while I'm in the bathroom, that's when she arrives. Great. And then the phone rings, and you have to explain, sorry, I couldn't hear you because I was really occupied in the bathroom that was only about 10 feet away from the front door. And that's why I didn't hear you there. Huh. It can be awkward. Um, but it definitely makes it interesting. Um, and again, it's just kind of on again, off again, because you have to continue taking some of these medications, and you don't know when it's gonna come through, and then you have to take all kinds of other supplements to counter this, and it's a fun it's a fun chemistry set game to see. Okay, you take this drug to do this to fight the cancer. Okay, but then you have to take this drug to counter one of the side effects from the chemo, and then you have to take another drug to counteract the side effect of that drug. But then you have to take this over-the-counter supplement to. It's like, oh my god, and then you end up taking, a pile of pills this high that are all just meant to counteract each other. Makes you wonder. So, that's always a fun experience. And I was also chatting with a friend of mine about the fact that, just kind of taking a look at the economy and taking a look at the future. And, uh, I guess it all tipped off after I had a conference call this week. The kind of it was a topic at work that has been a source of some frustration for me and a colleague, and we were talking about it afterwards. And he'd said that this conference was going to be happening, and that maybe I should take the call from home instead of coming in for the meeting because it would just stress me out and upset me. Okay, I took his advice. He was right, and I really wasn't up for going into the office, especially because my vision's been a little blurry. Again, one of the side effects we think of the steroid more than anything else. So being able to avoid driving in and sparing myself the frustration in person, not such a bad idea. And I'm listening to the call, and I'm listening to the topics, and it got very heated. And ordinarily, I would be jumping into the fray and staking, throwing my stake in the ground and joining in with the fighting. And I just kind of sat there and I listened. And this little voice in the back of my head said, why bother? Why extend the energy? It's not worth it. Now, I'm not saying I'm coming out of this whole cancer experience a whole new Zen philosophy and nothing's ever going to stress me out again because life isn't worth getting stressed out. No, of course I'm going to get stressed out. But it did start to make me wonder, especially think about other people that are in, um, I'll say, less satisfactory jobs, or jobs where they don't feel passionate about it, but they get themselves worked up and stressed out over it. When you go through an experience like cancer and you survive, and you have a job like that, you have to wonder, what am I surviving for? What is it? And I'm kind of understanding. I guess before I had cancer, I had an appreciation for the fact that you come through it, a life and death experience, and you come out feeling differently and trying to readjust to the real world. Just like, I'm thinking, okay, when you leave summer camp, it's hard to readjust to being back at home, but eventually you do it pretty quickly. But I think you kind of do get a different perspective when you go through it yourself of, I don't want to say reevaluating who you are, but you know you have to fight so much and you have to come through so much and you have to bear so much um, pride reducing experiences, and I don't want to say humiliation, but you have to experience so much when you fight cancer that is um, race, religion, education blind, that when you come out the other end, um, you want to feel different, you want to feel transformed, you want to feel like you're bursting out of that cocoon. And I can only imagine what it's going to be like to go out the other side and then go back to your everyday life and your regular job and just kind of think, was it worth it? And I think even if you have the best job in the world, whatever that job is, you kind of go through that. So I'm sitting there through this conference call thinking about the stuff that would ordinarily get me just riled up, thinking, wow, is this something worth getting riled up about? Not that the job isn't worth it, but is it worth that kind of emotional investment? So it's an interesting thing to kind of start thinking about. You almost go through this, what do I want to be when I grow up experience all over again, which of course is very exciting when you're not in your early 20s anymore, let's just say. Um, and at a point in your life, for most people, where you would think that you're more settled, and you'd be in a job or career position that is your ideal. Um, it's a weird thing to kind of sit back and start wondering if it is. Um, so interesting stuff to kind of start thinking about. Anyway, I've gone on for long enough. That's where I'm at. Chemo round 2, day 10. Um, I'll try and be funnier in my next posts. So have a good night.